All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm very excited. I have two special guests with me today. We have Charlotte and Anna, who just recently started the Truthful Transsexual podcast, which I'm very excited about because I do feel there is a lot of suppression going on around these conversations, which just makes me that much more fascinated of why that suppression is happening and why I see people like yourselves who have what to me seem like moderate positions. I'm seeing you get like just run over on Twitter. Like, and I saw someone attack you for using the word transsexual, saying that's a slur. And it's like, how did we get to this point so quickly, you know? But if you want to, maybe Charlotte, tell us a little bit about what you are planning to do with the podcast, what topics you guys are interested in, and yeah, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, the podcast, we decided to get together and come, face to video. So, try to get more of that face to face feel in a way, other than just some random account on Twitter. Uh, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it can show stuff, but a lot of people it it builds more trust and also kind of brings people to pay a little bit more attention other than just scrolling over a tweet
Mm-hmm.
and then being immediately combative. So, our main focus is to really show the difference in um, transsexuals versus, everything else under the trans umbrella.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, do both of you kind of reject the whole concept of a trans umbrella, or do you give any leeway there? If you have any thoughts about that.
I mean, I think there's a difference between the social construct of trans and the medical condition. It's important to acknowledge that. Like, people can identify how they want to identify. Like, I don't deny the existence of transvestites or people with autogynephilia or autoandrophilia. I don't believe in conflating a severe medical condition with those groups. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even believe in conflating my medical condition with sexual orientation.
Mm. Yeah, and those are very so. How would you define a difference between like the experience that a self-identified transsexual person has? How is that different than the other thing, like you were talking about autogynephilia? Do you think I've recently been watching some of Phil Illy's interviews, and he's like a open autogynephile. He has some interesting ideas. I'm not sure if I get down with all of it, but I was actually getting attacked by gender critical feminists because he identifies as male, an autogynephilic male, and he went to the GenSpect conference in Denver and wore a dress. And uh, even though he's saying I'm a man, he's not trying to use female restrooms or anything that you would think would trigger gender critical feminists. They are still attacking him. Well, their idea is that always like turned on by being in a dress. And did either of you follow any of that controversy when it happened?
I saw it blow up on Twitter. Other than that, I'm like, okay, there's just another AGP sitting there, on Twitter, and okay, that's weird. He's at Jen's back. Okay, moving on.
For me, I don't know why the weirder a situation is or more controversial, I tend to get like hyperfixation. So I'll just become like obsessed with something until I can like put it in a spot that makes sense in my brain, if that makes sense at all. But I
Well,
wanted to ask you, Anna, you identify as a transmedicalist,
yeah.
which is a term that often like people call like true scum. When someone says true scum, are they referring to someone who's a transmedicalist?
Well, I'm not like super into the internet lingo. Like, I kind of just
Mhm.
recently developed an internet presence. I know true scum is a term that they use to label people who identified as transsexual who didn't consider anything else to be trans. Transmedicalism is basically just a belief in a biological empirical model for being a transsexual. It's a belief that gender dysphoria is a specific sex based discomfort with primary and secondary sexual characteristics. It exists outside of social cues and perceived sex traits. Um, And we believe that gender identity is a neurobiological phenomenon, that it's immutable, that the David Raymer experiments with John Money prove that you can't just transition someone who doesn't already have a mismatch between their sex identity and their physical sex. So like you can't really change your internal sex, and if you could, being a transsexual, it would be curable without transitioning. And so transmedicalism is just this belief in a concrete medical foundation for a condition that we consider very severe.
Mm. And you both are against childhood transition, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
And something that's very much
absolutely.
confusing to me is how there's a lot of institutions that I would kind of normally like trust to be scientifically based that are saying things that aren't reflective of the data that I've looked at about puberty blockers. We always hear this, people are always saying it's totally reversible, it's a pause button. What do you say to people who say stuff like that, either one of you?
I mean, we have a mutual friend who, and I have a few friends who had this experience that have diagnoses of gender dysphoria, who did not transition. And when they hit puberty, the flood of, their native sex hormones solved it. So that's one reason not to transition your kid before puberty. Another reason not to transition, at least for male to female, like in my case, is that you don't have the right development down there. If you don't have enough development down there, it's harder to have a successful bottom surgery. There have been multiple cases of doctors coming together to talk about patients who transitioned and had their puberty blocked who have never experienced an orgasm. And I don't believe that locking in a sexless life is the solution to having a sexless life. You know?
Oh, absolutely. I I'm a little familiar with what you're talking about because I followed Jazz Jennings, and she was like one of the early like media like trans like the OG kind of like trans kid. And I remember her doctor was Dr. Marcy Bowers is her name? Bowers?
Yeah.
She's a famous
Head of the
trans,
WAPAS.
yeah, super famous. And she said fairly flippantly these things like, yeah, all these kids who I've suppressed puberty at a certain point, none of them are able to orgasm. And I know that is such a profound side effect. Uh, why do you think it's being covered up?
There's a lot of money to be made off of us. There's a
Mm,
whole lot of money to be made off of us. It's the same
Yeah.
reason I think Spyro is still the recommended drug for anti-androgens in America, even though it's dangerous and we have better alternatives out of Europe. Our system hasn't really been properly re-regulated since the 80s. The
mm,
WAPAth just recently rejected alternatives to Spyro in 2022, citing that we're going to keep using what we were using in the 80s. And I think that they keep the system this way because it's archaic and it causes problems like the one I experienced in the middle of my transition. And that forces you to advance your transition to have surgeries. Kids who start younger are more likely, like it's around 24, 25. I started at 18, to have complications with Spyro. You can't be on it long term often. And so then they have to go in for bottom surgery. They have to go in for something that's going to neutralize the testosterone. Otherwise, they have to detransition. So we
mm,
really do have the system structured to force people into these paths that cost a lot of money.
mm-hmm. And I'm curious, why do you think that, like, because I can totally see that too. Like, obviously, there's this huge financial incentive at play to create lifelong medical patients when there aren't some, and it's really unfortunate that this is like muddying the waters for people who truly are gender dysphoric and transition is beneficial for them. Why do you think, like, the community itself, I feel um, there's a lot of like self internal policing, and it's just so uniform and just so strictly regulated. I just wonder why more people aren't speaking out. Do either of you have any theories on why that is?
You go ahead, Charlotte.
Um, I think a lot of people are like afraid to speak out, mainly because and usually it's on the transsexual side of things or on the detrans side of things. There's now this giant community of transgender that will just bombard you and attack you for saying anything other than the narrative at the time. And it's this cult-like following that you get. So you have very few of us actually you know speaking up and saying like, hey, like, these things are dangerous. Hey, we've a lot of us have walked the walk, and you know you see all this other stuff, oh, you don't need to be on hormones to be trans or anything like that. When you start saying like, yeah, you do. Like, it's a very medical thing. Um, People just start attacking you left and right. And, you see big names out there, like, and you look through their hate mail. Oh my goodness. Like, and that weighs heavy on people. Like, if you've ever said something on Twitter or, wherever, and people just start hate mailing you in the comment section, uh, it can weigh on you. And I think that's why a lot of people don't speak up and talk.
Absolutely.
Transsexuals who say anything contrary to gender ideology are stalked, doxxed, and harassed. That's why. In fact, like, if you're a transsexual and you get on the wrong side of someone, they can just say you like Blair White. There you go. Your job's gone.
That's funny you say Blair White, because I have the confession that when I first made this channel, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was a little more in that kind of like cult-like mindset where I had convinced myself that any doubts that I felt, I truly believed this is internalized transphobia. So I didn't even let myself go there to really question certain narratives. Did either of you feel that pressure yourself, or did you always have such a clear perception of what's going on?
I'm a leftist. So Charlotte's my conservative co-host. I'm the leftist of the
Yeah.
transmedicalist spectrum. And absolutely, I never said a word about trans issues. I've been transitioning for almost 15 years, 14 legally. I'm post bottom surgery, I'm post top surgery. I've had my FFS. Like, I'm done. I'm with my husband. I'm happy. I had a pretty good life and pretty good career, and was smeared and canceled for liking Blair White. So, it's you exist under the threat of authoritarian violence nowadays. You exist under the threat of doxing and hazing if you say a word, even about your own experiences. If it contradicts the narrative of what's being said, that's it. That's all it takes. It doesn't matter if you're a transsexual. It doesn't matter what policy positions you support, who you vote for. All that matters is, do you agree with transgender ideology or not? And if you don't, you can't say a word about it.
And
Yeah.
Charlotte, how was that experience for you as a conservative? Did you feel the same level of suppression, or since you're more conservative, did you always kind of have these views on things?
Well, in my conservative circles, I've had a lot of people, make fun of me and stuff like that for what, like Dylan Mulvaney will do. Somebody will be like, "Oh, well, hey, get your get your person off stage or whatever." Because conservatives, they generally don't like Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah, with a fiery
Neither do
passion that I
I.
almost don't understand.
Yeah, neither do I. I mean, can be entertaining, but it's not my cup of tea, so I tend to avoid watching it. But as that is, they've come to actually learn, like, hey, yes, people can have gender dysphoria, they can go through transitioning, and they can not be a raging lunatic.
Mm-hmm. And that's reflective of like, I do feel very like I perceive it very differently. Like I have friends who it seems like trans is more of a political identity, and then but then I have just people who happen to be transsexual in my life, and most of them they're either completely just don't even engage with it because it's so crazy, or like they're just not even aware it's happening because they're just living their lives and they just live, they transition and it's over.
Yeah.
It's not the biggest thing about them, it's just a feature of who they are.
That's
Right.
that's the treatment. The treatment is to transition and live your best life. And I think really it's only those of us who have been impacted and who have other motivations to speak out who end up doing it. It's not pleasant to put yourself on a camera as a transsexual and say, I'm a transsexual. That's not something that's ever going to feel good. Dysphoria is crippling. And I think there's an element of the trans umbrella that does not have dysphoria. And for them, it's very easy to be visible. And it's really not when you have the medical side of the equation. And that's created this image, this illusion that they represent the totality of who we are. And they don't. Transsexuals do exist. We have primary sex dysphoria. It has nothing to do with like societal sex cues, and it is not curable. It requires medical treatment.
So that must be very like kind of insulting to you when people co-opt something as like a fashion almost that has been so impactful and difficult for you.
I think it's more just hard to deal with the conflation and the impact that has. I talked to someone who made an analogy with autism, actually. We changed autism to be like this spectrum, right? And you have severely
Mm,
autistic people, and then you have people who don't have severe autism. And the conflation between those two things can cause harm to both sides. We used to have the scale for transsexuals, the Benjamin scale, and at the bottom there were transvestites, and at the
mhm,
top there were transsexuals. And as you went through that scale, the severity of the condition got very bad. Um, Transvestites didn't need to transition, and transsexuals couldn't continue without transitioning. And it causes a lot of harm. It causes a lot
mhm,
of harm in how things are represented in the umbrella. For example, type 6 transsexuals are the people who actually run the risk of genital mutilation and suicide if they
mm,
get ramped up and manic about the sex dysphoria. No other branch of that, all the way up to 5, has it like that. But we
yeah,
all the time say trans people will kill themselves if you don't affirm their gender. But that's not
true.
true. That's taking a tiny section of this umbrella that has a very severe medical condition and painting all of the social construct with it.
Yeah,
It's very harmful to parents.
oh, absolutely.
Very much so.
I've been watching a lot of interviews with like parents of young trans kids, and it's such an interesting or I don't know, I don't want to talk like it's some scientific, like, these are real people with real lives, and it's a lot of them do kind of feel blackmailed almost by a doctor saying something like, would you rather have a dead son or a live daughter? How do you how do we even move away from this insanity? It's the kind of, it's just so crazy that's been accepted. But also,
Right.
or if you wanted to add anything to that, sorry, my
By
brain goes like
going
all
back
over the
to a
place.
biological empirical model for being transsexual.
Mhm.
I'm a
Yeah.
And I
man
think,
with a
yeah, I
medical
would,
condition. That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, and also when you make it not a medical condition, doesn't that kind of put you in a position where you can't use like insurance or, um, like there's
Yeah.
such a kind of. Do you
Yeah.
want to elaborate on that kind of aspect of it? Either of you, Charlotte, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of see it happening in certain states now where they're trying to push these laws that will just first read, first draft that some state representative puts out there, it looks like they're just ready to just ban it all, chuck it out the window. Good luck. Have fun. And that isn't a good healthcare model to do that. And especially for adults, really, especially for kids, because even if there are kids that are currently under medical, and say they were to stop, they would have to, slowly come off of those. And if any of that comes under any of these, insurance codes, and they just do all the insurance care, well, parents, adults, everybody's left on their own to pay for that care to slowly wean them off. And then sometimes doctors even have their hands tied to where they can't do anything. So there's a good way to go about it, and there's a bad way to go about it with that. And yeah, absolutely. If you take it to where it's not a medical condition anymore, insurance companies can very much say, no, we don't have to cover you for that.
Yeah, that seems like a huge obvious risk that, or unintended consequence of it. I'm also curious, it's a little changing the topic, but something that really interests me in people is like, where do you find the courage to go against the grain, like personally because for me, I'm not trans, but like even speaking about the topic, I did have a lot of fear of like shunning, backlash, but I'm also at a point where I feel I'm a little older, I'm a little more secure, and I care a little less or a lot less what I used to care about, like what my social group thinks broadly. For if each of you want to take a turn answering, how do you find that like courage in yourself, or have you always just been kind of like I don't want to say contrarian, but just willing to go against the grain?
That's hard to say. And Anna, did you have one more thing to add on that last bit though?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that if we're demedicalized, we lose our HIPAA protections in America.
Oh.
You ever want to make a list of all the trans people? Demedicalize us.
Wow. I didn't even think of that. And then another thing is like, I feel like I'm seeing a more actual tangible backlash to being trans because of all this excess. Now you see people on conservative side saying, ban it all, ban transition. Like, and I do feel that's why it's so important to have people like both of you who are brave enough and to put yourself out there and say that, because every person who does that, it inspires others. It gives other people feel like they can have a voice. And I feel like your views are probably more representative of your average transsexual person,
Yeah. I mean, in a way for me, it's, I don't, as long as anything that I say reaches one other person, then, that's good enough, because that person could go out and reach 1,000 more than me,
Exactly.
But if it really reaches the right person, then we can stop a lot of this nonsense that's going on.
And what about you, Anna? Because I'm curious. Like I've seen you going back and forth on Twitter a lot. I do the same thing. Sometimes I enjoy the back and forth, but do you find it like very taxing on you personally to speak out?
Not really. I mean, I'm post SRS. I'm in a really, really good state in my life. I'm pretty happy. For me, it's almost like an outlet. I didn't really choose this path. It was kind of put before me. I was working on disability rights and housing advocacy, and I was canceled. And now this is what I'm left with. They shut me down for liking Blair White and used it
Is
to
that
ruin my
something
life.
you're
So
comfortable talking about, like your cancellation? Because I wasn't familiar with that until you briefly mentioned it earlier.
it's a really long story. But there was a manager at work who had reasons to have a serious problem with me, who went online and rabble-roused a bunch of radical activists and labeled me a transmedicalist, which I didn't even know what transmedicalism was at the time. As it turns out, it's anybody who had the common belief for transsexuals pre-2013. So if you're a transsexual over 30, you're probably a transmedicalist because you
Yeah.
transitioned in a medical system that had a diagnosis. Um, and it's it was brutal. I lost 2 jobs. I had to move. It
Unbelievable.
cost me everything. I'm not really ready to talk about it in detail, but I will one day.
Yeah, yeah.
But it really did. It was recent and it shook up my entire life. I had to uproot and move. Like we talked about before the
Jesus.
stream, I was without a job for 6 months. I went from working 60 hours a week to no income immediately, all because of a couple tweets labeling me a fan of Blair White. And they didn't mention that I was a transsexual. So the hate, the backlash, it all came at me like it would any normal person. And even when people realized that I was trans, that didn't stop it. It doesn't matter. Like I said, it really doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, what you've accomplished. All that matters is you don't support the ideology. So this is what I have, I have an outlet, I have a microphone, and I'm ready to go.
I really respect that, and I'm really sorry that happened to you. And it's something I want to, use at least my platform to some degree to speak out and put my voice out there and say that I think it's very wrong what is being done, like to trans people in the name of their own like rights. It's really mind-boggling, but I think it's just so incredibly wrong to ostracize, shun. All those behaviors are so toxic. Like, what I think, Charlotte, were you saying it's almost like cult-like? Is that, do you see a lot of similarities with that?
Yeah, I mean, online I've seen people just get piled on. They'll talk out to, say, one influencer, respond on something, and then all their followers come in and just start reporting them, getting their accounts banned, and it's just because somebody stood up and said the right thing.
Yeah. I actually, Anna, you got me in a little trouble for you linked me. I asked you posted something about lady ballers and I asked you for the link. And then I was fighting with someone for I'd like done a stream a few weeks ago about trans sports, and I think I'm pretty mild in my views, but whatever. That kind of brought a little negative attention to me. So this person decided I'm a Nazi, I'm a TERF, and they scan all my replies, my likes, and they start screenshotting stuff. And then they were like, look, she watched Lady Ballers. She watched, and like, because of that, they were like saying all these things. And I'm like, what the heck? Also, even if I watch, and I told him, I was like, first off, I watched the movie, and thank you for the link. I actually, because I'm not about to sign up for Daily Wire, not right there. But yeah, I thought the movie it was kind of stupid, but I don't I don't think it should be off limits to joke about stuff like that. I think it just kind of shows that Daily Wire doesn't really get trans issues to really make it as funny as it could be, in my opinion. Like, what did you? I mean, I don't want to blow up because I know you guys have your upcoming episode is going to be talking about that, so I don't want to steal anything. I just thought that was a funny coincidence.
I thought it was hilarious,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, yeah, like it's for a little
Yeah,
bit older crowd. Like some of the jokes were over my
Yeah.
head. I'm not from the 80s or the 70s, whatnot, but I thought it was hilarious. I
it
also
really
welcome to
was.
the team. We watched Lady Ballers too.
Ooh, yeah. I thought it was so crazy because it's not like I posted, I love late. It was just the mere fact that I had asked to see it. And for all they know, like, I want to watch it so I could tear it apart and see how fucked up it is. I'm not even financially supporting them. Like,
I mean, it wasn't that transphobic. Like, we're only mentioned in one scene.
Yeah,
Transsexuals are literally only mentioned in one scene.
Right? It's
I mean,
primarily about like this, it's like a joke. It's like a stupid like she's the man. It gave me vibes of like those kind of that genre of early 2000s comedies, like. And there was
Yeah.
the part that got me so much was Matt Walsh in that, like playing the like I'm sorry, I don't want to like him, but like he is really funny sometimes, and I don't,
Oh,
well,
I
Anna, what
feel
is it you
that.
said the whole time? Matt
Wait,
Walsh
what was
is
that?
what?
Okay, I didn't know that Matt Walsh was in the movie, and I didn't recognize Matt Walsh when I saw him.
Oh my
And then
god.
Shar tells me that it's Matt Walsh, and I'm just dying. And I'm like, one, I didn't know he was Bay. He's cute in that. And two, he's the perfect choice to make fun of a West Coast hippie. Good God.
I thought he nailed it. Like
He
that was the
nailed
part that
it.
I thought was I was actually like laughing out loud for parts of that because
Even the signs in the yard, those are all over the place
Yeah.
on the
oh
West
yeah.
Coast.
Oh my gosh.
I think Matt has some explaining to do. He always talks about going out in the woods and everything on his show. So, Matt, you got some explaining to do on how much of a hippie you really are.
Now I legitimately think he has an alt account on Twitter where he's just like this grass touching, peace loving hippie, just to be like the polar opposite of what he is, because he did it too well.
Right. There's got to be something. I'm actually curious, just broadly speaking, how do you both feel about like Matt Walsh in general? Like, as a conservative, I'm curious, what do you think, Charlotte? Do you think conservatives like that are going off the rails with things, or like, what is your thoughts?
I wouldn't say Matt Walsh is really like the voice of, all the conservatives.
True, true, true,
I
true.
I I personally think a lot of his tweets are really cringe and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of the ways he says stuff, he'll, he's to me with his points and stuff is a blind squirrel will eventually find a nut. But um, like him in the movie was absolutely great, and uh, him as a debater, he's actually really good. So, and he'll make good points during his actual debates. But I'm
Hmm.
not a fan of his shows. Some other of my friends do like him, but they tend to like Michael Knowles better.
Mm. I actually kind of like how Michael knows just relates and like has this kind of almost he doesn't hate. I think he's amused by far left extremism in a way that kind of takes the fangs out of it. He's just like, you guys are just these crazy kids. What are you doing? you know?
Yeah. And then Ben Shapiro is just like, well, he's Ben Shapiro.
He's been oh my goodness. Are there any conservatives that you feel kind of your views align with, like in the mainstream, or is that hard for you to find?
Um, no, not really. I actually really enjoy I watch a couple of different like news commentators and stuff like that that are on the mainstream that are probably really popular with conservatives. Um, Carl Higg being one of them. That guy is just amazing and funny. So that kind is generally my following on that. But really, I'm not into the whole the big battles. Conservative versus leftist.
Mhm.
Uh, where I like to dive deep into is what's actually happening on the state um, floors and what's
Mm.
happening on you know in the Senate and what's happening. Well, maybe I don't want to know what's happening in the Senate now because of the chamber rooms, but
Oh gosh.
um,
We all know
Bottom
a little too
gate.
much about what's going on there. I saw the clip
right,
unrollingly on Twitter, and I'm like, Twitter needs to have some system because I'm exposed to. I'll be scrolling, and it's like dead body, sexy OnlyFans model, outrageous tweet, and it's very like probably not good for your brain, in my opinion.
yeah. Well, you can have the safe search on, and
Might have to
you
start
see
with that.
well, you see puppies and kittens, and you know how to cook a pizza uh, and stuff like that, but turn it off, and then you get the actual like political discourse. But with that, turns into all these other, posts and stuff that you don't want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that you were conservative and you're on the left, Anna, you said?
Mm-hmm.
I
Sort
think
of.
that's yeah, I don't I honestly I've always been on the left, so it's hard for me to say that I'm not, when we don't really have these great choices presented, at least what like you're saying on the like federal level, on the local level, there is so much more tangible work that like really does impact lives directly, and that is where a lot of important things are happening. But it's so easy to be distracted by the showmanship and the big, things going on, at the higher levels. Um,
Yeah.
but actually, I wanted to know, how did you both of you even meet each other to start this podcast?
What did we? That was just through Laura, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trolling on Twitter and kind of bumped into Charlotte's social circle like a
Yeah.
ship hitting an iceberg.
Nice. And you both just kind of hit it off and started talking and were like, let's do this kind of thing?
We
Yeah,
really did.
yeah. I've been like trying to get together with like-minded people ever since I was canceled and found out that transmedicalism is a slur. Um,
It's so
Charlotte's a real
wild.
awesome person to run into.
You were accused of these things that you were, and like the fact that it's Blair White of all people. It's not, if you watch, because I used to think she was the boogeyman because I just believed what other people told me about her. And I actually started watching a lot of people like on the right, like, just more like libertarian or whatever. But I watched them like starting as hate watching. I was like, I'm gonna see how fucked up they really are. And then like gradually I started being like, oh shit, like this is kind of all of a
She's
sudden
kind of based.
I know, I was like, wait, when I just like am 100% real, like, yeah, she's fucking kind of based. I don't like, she's not being, she's actually quite considerate, and, and she has like done messed up things and apologized for them, like anyone who's in her position, but she's been just terrorized. And it's so bizarre that she's so controversial that just like following her on Twitter is enough to blow up your life. It's just crazy to me. Absolutely insane to me.
Yeah. I mean, she still has a huge army behind her as well.
True.
Even though as much people can tell you, like, oh gosh, don't watch Blair White. Like,
That's the
my
She's
thing
only
that
likable. She's funny,
That's the thing that struck me about the Jubilee debate was when they said that Blair White doesn't work with the grassroots, you know? Sure. Every single time transsexuals try to get together to form a nonprofit to represent ourselves in politics, we get doxxed and harassed, hazed, and it gets shut down. That's
Yeah.
true. But Blair White does have an army of transsexual supporters. Some of us quietly watch and like her videos, scared to say a word because we have families and careers, and some of us not, because we have the luxury or have already been canceled.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I mean, I'm at a point where like I used to feel more afraid of being canceled, but I blew up my life by other means. But it is kind of a liberating spot, given all the like bullshit of, blowing up your life. It's kind of liberating that I'm like, well, I got nothing to lose. Like, I'm just gonna start being honest as fuck and see what happens, and already it's connected me to interesting people like you two, who when, you live on the opposite side of the country. I'm not sure about you, Charlotte, but, that, I don't know, I love that aspect of speaking out, is that when you start telling the truth, people do notice that and it draws people to you. Have you guys experienced that?
yes, very much so. And, I love that I've gotten to meet so many amazing people online and, really get to know them. And Anna's one of them.
Oh.
Ditto.
Sorry, let's not get too sappy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
No, I love it. No, because it's so important to build those relationships when you've been disconnected, and a community's been taken away from you. And so I am noticing like there is a community of just people who have been canceled. They find each other, and then they create a new community that's honestly a lot more interesting, a lot more important conversations happening when people decide like I've got nothing to lose. I'm just going to say what I think. I think that's so powerful.
I think we're also seeing a cultural shift in America. We're seeing like a lot of minorities who are disenfranchised and who are being pushed out of the left. We're seeing it with Hispanic people. We're seeing it with gay people. We're now seeing it with transsexuals. There are a lot of my Jewish friends who have been Democratic voters for years are now leaving the left as a result of, recent politics. And I think we're really seeing a minority voting bloc form that's moderate and has conservative tendencies. And I'm kind of hoping that the Conservative Party seizes the moment and sides with the disenfranchised minorities fleeing the left and harnesses us as a voting bloc. I think it's time for moderate conservatism to take back over.
Exactly. But it's so hard when you're in the attention marketplace. People go for the outrage too often, so it's so hard to but I do see people finding each other, and it's very cool to just watch that unfold. So you both met on Twitter, and I guess that's where I found you too, Anna. What are your thoughts on Twitter as a whole right now? Do you think it's moving in a better direction? Do you feel safer in your free speech, being able to talk about these issues now that Elon's taken over? Or how do you feel about that?
I'm entirely new to Twitter. I was not on Twitter when Twitter was used as a weapon to ruin my life. So
that's probably for the best.
Yeah, probably for the best. I can't really say how it's changed. I do think that there are a lot of really good conversations happening on there, but from an American perspective, it seems to be people who are moderates. You have radical people who are off in the far left and radical people who are off in the far right, and then you have this huge collection of moderates trying to find common ground. And I think it's just really indicative of where our country's going. The parties are so polarized. Politics is so polarized. The majority of Americans aren't voting. And what are we doing? We're trying to find common ground in discussion online.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. Like you're saying, creating a new voting block and creating that, and working at the local level. What are some legal policies that either of you feel strongly should be enacted that would be different? Do you support total bans on under 18 transition?
Yeah.
What about any thoughts on trans sports, about those legalities? If there's anything from the legal perspective you want to add?
I mean, I support banning transition for minors. I don't think it's appropriate. I've already said why, and I stand by that. As far as us participating in sports, I mean, I think if you want to have a professional athletic career and you're a transsexual or an AGP or whatever you are, I think that you should go the route of Bruce Jenner. I think you should compete as a man and then transition and then live as a woman. Caitlyn did it right. Like Caitlyn competed as a man in men's sports. And if you're going to compete professionally in sports post-transition, you should do it like my friend. My friend has been transitioning for 5 years, had an orchiectomy. She's been on hormones for that entire time. She's been training to box. She fights men, only men. She's been training for a year and she's 2-0. So I think that if you want to be an inspiring trans person in sports, then without testosterone, with a post-transition body, go place on a podium in a men's competition. That would be really inspiring for me. It's not inspiring to see men crushing women.
And what are your thoughts on that, Charlotte?
I would just have to ditto.
Ditto.
One of the big reasons I got along with Anna so much is that she can hit point on a topic and I don't have to say much after.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to have, a dynamic that works together and that you can really feed off of. I'm so excited for you guys' podcast because I'm someone who consumes a ridiculous amount of, I have like bad insomnia, so I will just literally, if you look at my screen time on my phone, it is like 12 hours. I mean, especially I'm unemployed right now, so obviously that that's a factor. But like the amount of content, a lot of it is me just trying to sleep. So I'm listening to podcasts. So I'm super excited for that. Do you guys have any podcasts you like right now that you recommend, or were you going to say something, Anna?
Yeah, I was actually. A little bit of advice. You got that laptop and stuff. Switch over to your laptop when it's around bedtime, a couple hours before bedtime, and download f.lux and kill the circadian pattern, like the blue light in your screen. That keeps you awake. I have,
True.
I
I've
have
heard about
terrible
that.
insomnia. I'm very high energy. Remember we were talking before the show about how
Yeah,
Charlotte's
we
been
were
cut
both like
stone, so I'm not like,
freaking out, you know.
yeah,
I'm like smoking my Newports, like.
exactly. Yeah, try cutting the blue light out a couple hours before sleep. For high energy people like us, it helps.
Yeah, that I've heard of that. Actually, for a while, I did have glasses that were like blue light
Mhm.
resistant because I used to get more like migraines. I used to have a lot of just random health issues like over the years.
No, I do. I grew up in the church. I was a part of my local church for a very long time, um, which, there's things that I agree with church and don't, but I still keep my faith.
Yeah, I'm in
That's
like
and
a
that's
weird
what's
spot.
important to me.
Yeah, I think that can be. I was a like hardcore atheist for a really long time, and I wanted to ask you because I'm wearing like a little cross thing right now too that my mom got me. But
Aw.
I was raised in the church. My parents, my mom was a worship leader. They were in the church band, a very like musical family. And
Yeah,
but then I became just very like militant atheist, like very from a young age I was always just that kind of obnoxious person who would like argue all day. And then 6 months ago when I was detoxing from the drugs that I was addicted to, I had like a very intense religious experience that I almost accredit like for getting me as far as I did without being in a rehab facility. And I don't understand it because my brain is so atheist, it's really hard for me to break from that. So I'm like, at this point, I'm like
yeah,
agnostic, but I pray, I read the Bible, and I wear my little cross. I went to church, so it's something I'm exploring, you know. So I think it's cool to have that kind of different representation and um, different
yeah,
acting
yeah,
for sure.
and, moments like that, I think sometimes you just need to enjoy the aha or the epiphany, that it helped you out with, and enjoy
Yeah,
that feeling, that and the help, that you may have gotten from it. So, sometimes you just have to enjoy those, like, simple little things, um, and maybe later explore them and realize why it gave you such a profound experience.
yeah. It's just interesting because I was almost contemplating. I was like, do I want to wear my little cross? So then I thought it was funny that you were wearing it because part of me is like, am I even ready to discuss that if it comes up? You know, I'm always thinking of like everything that could happen, and I
Yeah.
think I'm okay with just expressing that right now.
But, um, I still keep my core faith and everything that, uh, kinda just gives me my moral background.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's super interesting, and it's like, for me, like I made a bunch of changes in my life, and it kind of relates to the the trans thing because like that's one of the topics that I was afraid to talk about, but I feel like I just want to be in a place where I'm living in my truth, like, and always I just feel like it brings me to like a place where I feel like spiritually well if I'm just being totally honest and um like not letting myself be held back or something, if that makes sense.
I think that's the best way to live your life.
Absolutely. So I think Charlotte lost the video, or maybe she stepped out for a moment. Let me see. Oops.
Sometimes her
Maybe
internet
I'll.
craps out. It'll come back.
Oh, Okay, well, we haven't had any technical issues yet. That's great.
Yeah, there she
Oh, there
goes.
you are.
Sorry, I had to sneeze.
Oh no, totally fine. We were just wasn't sure if I fucked something up or something.
Yeah.
So I know I'm kind of all over the place asking a lot of questions. So I want to maybe give you both an opportunity to say, like, are there any topics that we didn't touch on that you think are really important right now, or that you feel compelled to speak on?
Anna?
Let me think about it. You go.
Okay.
Or if not, I mean, it's fine if nothing is coming to mind. I know I'm like putting you on the spot a lot with these questions.
I mean, no, I think that anything that we kind of went over a lot of everything that we had like previously talked about, so I'm pretty happy. I mean, if you have any questions for me, like, go ahead.
I mean, I think the main ones I was like, I mean, if I can ask you a little more about like your faith experience, do you feel accepted in that community, or did you have any backlash from that?
I've certainly had backlash from, and when I say that, I've mainly had backlash online.
Mm-hmm. Right,
If I
people are
talk to
so
anybody,
different in person, or even when you're video chatting, people will type up a freaking storm, and I'm like, "Hey, come on," and then they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
well, I noticed. I disagree with you a little." They change, they flip so
right.
quick. They flip so quick.
Yeah, they're so powerful behind behind an avatar and
The
or
anime
profile
avatar only.
pic and on the screen, they're very powerful behind that. Um, but as soon as you talk to them face to face or, on video, it's so much different. There's a sense of calm and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
locally, there's, you know, my church that I was going to, uh, they were very welcoming, and I mean, they were so welcoming. They had cross dressers going in their Sunday cross dress best.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were a few.
Wow.
Um, but they still wanted them to come to worship and everything like that. So that was a very good side of it. I have my own like beliefs on uh, corporate church and things
Mhm.
like that, and are they really spreading the right message, um, and the core of it and stuff like that. But even uh, the Vatican right now, has very much been in the news, which I wasn't part of the Catholic Church. Some people might call me a heretic for not being that, but um, I don't I don't care. I was raised in a Methodist church, so
Me
yeah,
too. That is so weird.
yeah,
No one ever says Methodist, and that was, yeah, I was raised in Methodist church too. And then I went kind of non-denominational. We moved around a lot, but
yeah,
that was kind of like
yeah.
my
There,
core thing.
I find a lot of Methodists now are more non-denominational than Methodists, but they still stay true to their roots of just going out and doing service work, mowing somebody's lawn that can't do it, um, handing out bottles of water to on a hot sunny day that you know people aren't drinking enough water. So
Mhm.
that was the type of things that we did, setting up food drives, setting up hygiene drives for um, the poor people and stuff like that. Like, I still have one project that I did when I was a kid that became so popular, like the whole entire city's doing it now. It's just these little hygiene product collection bins. They go
Mhm.
out every year, they fill the warehouses, and they last for a year off of just doing that drive for a month. And it's a no pressure model too, because it's a bin saying, hey, if you don't mind, grab an extra toothbrush or some extra toothpaste or extra toilet paper. drop it in the bin here, and we're going to give it to, these other people that can't afford it. So
Wow, that's awesome. That I feel like that it can make such a difference. I know a lot of people, since I struggled with addiction, who struggled with homelessness, and having access to like hygiene and those very basic things can be absolutely life changing for a person who, when you have nothing, that's very hard to navigate like social services, especially if you're seriously mentally ill. There's just so that's another topic I'm very interested in, because I have an older brother who is schizophrenic, kind of got screwed up in the system, and he ended up passing away in jail. And we saw a lot of like things in my family about
Right.
how fucked up the system is right now, and how fucked up the resources that are available to people are. And Anna, you were talking about you're interested in, you had a past working with people with disabilities. I just think it's awesome that both of you guys, it seems like you have really like a strong moral purpose, and I think that's a true gift, to be able to find that in yourself. So
It's one of the things that pushed me away from, being lockstep with the left, was the language of serving disabled communities, seniors, and minorities without any follow through. I'm sorry for what happened to your relative. That's terrible. You say it was your brother?
yes, my older brother, yeah. It was like 4 years ago. We're still like, I don't want to say too many details. I'm so open that I'm like, wait, I too am
Yeah.
just throwing out more info for people
Be
to.
careful. People dox people who talk to transsexuals and spotlight us,
Yeah.
I was doxxed fairly early on. I already got a stalker like right when I started my channel. So I feel like, it's very unfortunate that that's the risks that we have to endure just for speaking honestly, but I've accepted those risks. But I just try to not be stupid, but yeah. Well, I think I had a really great time talking with both of you. If you want to have any final things you wanted to add, or if you want to talk about where we can find the podcast that's going to be coming out. You said you're still working on it, but I saw the trailer and I'm really excited to see what you both dive into.
The trailer is live on Rumble, just because of a lot of other guidelines and what we have to say. We feel like right now that's the safest platform for us to be on, because Rumble does, let you have a little bit more leeway. And that's it's Truthful TS. And we'll be on there doing a full in-depth review of Lady Ballers, which will be a lot of fun.
Can't wait.
Anna is absolutely brilliant in it, and just her little rants and stuff. So
Thanks.
no, it'll be a good time. So once we get all the editing and stuff like that done, it'll be up and live. And you can find me on Twitter. I put my handle right here. So
Awesome. Oh, that's smart. I should start doing that. Anything else you'd like to add, Anna? Or sorry if I cut you off in the middle.
Oh, no, you're good. No, you can follow me at TS Transgression. And yeah, our show will be up in about a week. And thanks for having us on. It's really great to talk to you in person. It was really nice to meet you. I like your show. And I hope you don't get any backlash for having transmedicalists on your show.
Let's hope so, because on that, hey, the algorithm loves it. So, we'll see. You want that like nice balance of backlash.
Yeah. I mean, I hope one day we can talk about our medical condition and the distinctions between the medical interpretation of being transsexual and the social construct without these kinds of issues. Both of us support secularism and freedom of speech, and it seems like we're moving towards a society governed by an authoritarian ideology that doesn't want us to talk about this. So I really hope we can move forward slowly towards a more reasonable society.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, both of you, so much for coming on.
Yeah, it was great to meet you.
End stream, and then we'll be backstage for a second. But and thank you for everyone for tuning in. It was a really awesome conversation. So, all right, I'm gonna hit end stream. And